I saved an Apache widow from a bear trap. Next morning, her people demanded I take her. I had ridden through that part of the forest many times before, but nothing had ever pulled me from the trail the way that desperate cry did. It was sharp, sudden, and filled with a kind of fear that made my horse stop on its own. I dismounted immediately, trying to follow the direction of the sound. The pine needles muffled my steps as I pushed through the dense brush, listening closely until the cries became clearer. When I stepped into the small clearing ahead, the sight tightened my chest. An Apache woman was lying on the ground, her ankle caught in a rusted bear trap, half buried under leaves. Her braids were scattered across the soil, her breath uneven, and though she tried to stay still, pain forced small tremors through her body. She looked at me with fear and caution mixed, unsure whether I was friend or foe. I raised my hands slowly, showing that I had no intention of bringing harm, then knelt beside the trap. She tried to pull her leg back as I examined the old metal jaws, but I told her softly that struggling would only worsen the injury. The trap had snapped tightly around her ankle, but the limb didn't look broken, just bruised and swollen. With careful pressure, I pushed down on the tension spring. The old iron resisted, creaking and groaning, but eventually the jaws loosened enough for me to release her. She pulled her leg away sharply, grimacing as the pain surged. I tore a strip from my spare cloth and wrapped her ankle firmly to keep it steady. She watched every movement closely, her breathing slowly calming, though her eyes still reflected uncertainty. When she finally managed to speak, she gave me her name, Naira. She explained that she had been collecting herbs in the area and hadn't noticed the hidden trap. I asked if she could stand, and she attempted it, but her weight collapsed almost immediately, forcing her to sit back down. Realizing she wouldn't be able to walk on her own, I offered to help her reach her camp. Though hesitant at first, she finally nodded. I lifted her gently, placing her on my horse, and she held the saddle horn tightly as I walked beside them. She said little on the way back, though her constant glances around showed she knew the forest better than any map ever could. As we approached the ridge, smoke from campfires began to rise through the trees, and figures soon emerged, alert Apache scouts with bows and rifles raised. They rushed forward, addressing Naira quickly in their language before shifting their guarded attention toward me. Her explanation eased the tension somewhat, and the scouts helped her down with care, guiding her into the camp. I intended to leave right then, believing my part in her story was done. But before I could step away, one of the elders motioned for me to follow. Unsure of what they wanted, I obeyed. The camp opened into a wide circle of shelters arranged around a central fire. People paused their work to observe me, not with hostility but with deep curiosity. The elder led me to a spot near the fire where several others had gathered, including Naira, who sat with her injured leg propped on a woven mat. Her face was calmer now, but still marked by the fading lines of fear and exhaustion. The elder began speaking, his tone steady and deliberate. Though I could understand only parts of his English, his meaning became clearer with each word. In their tradition, saving a widow, especially one who had lost much already, carried significant meaning. It wasn't simply an act of kindness. It created a bond of responsibility, an expectation of honor. More elders joined, their expressions serious but not hostile. They believed my act had stepped into the place once held by her late husband. I tried to explain that I had only done what any person should do, that my help didn't carry deeper intention, but they listened without nodding or disagreement, holding firm to their belief that fate guided such moments. The camp grew quiet as they waited for my response. I felt a wave of discomfort, realizing I had walked into customs I didn't fully understand. Still, I remained respectful, trying to grasp what they truly wanted. As the fire crackled and shadows shifted across their faces, I sensed that the matter would not be settled until the next day. The elder dismissed me with a gesture of acknowledgement, not anger, but expectation. As I left the camp and mounted my horse, a strange feeling followed me, like the forest, the people, and the encounter had tied me into something larger than a simple rescue. I knew I would return in the morning, not out of obligation forced upon me, but because walking away without understanding their intentions felt like abandoning something important. When I returned to the camp the next morning, the atmosphere was different from the day before. Instead of tense suspicion, there was a quiet but unmistakable sense of anticipation. People looked up from their morning tasks as I entered, their expressions neither cold nor overly welcoming, but observant, as though they were evaluating whether I had come by choice. The elder who had spoken the night before approached me with a nod and guided me toward the center, where a small group had gathered again. Naira was among them, her injured leg wrapped carefully in herbal poultices. She sat straighter than before and looked more composed, though there was still a hint of uncertainty in her gaze. When our eyes met, she gave a subtle nod, acknowledging that she understood why I had returned. The elders began speaking, some in their own language, some in broken English, and although I couldn't catch every detail, the translator they brought forward clarified their meaning. The act of saving. Naira had placed me in a position of responsibility according to their customs. It wasn't a demand for ownership or forced partnership. It was their belief that such an act symbolized stepping into a role of protection. I explained that where I came from, helping someone in danger didn't automatically tie two lives together. I said it respectfully, making sure they knew I wasn't dismissing their values. The translator conveyed my words carefully, and the elders listened without interruption. After a long pause, Naira spoke. Her voice was soft but steady, and she admitted that she feared being a burden to anyone. She had lost her husband not long ago and had been struggling to care for herself while still fulfilling the expectations placed on a widow. She didn't want her people forcing a stranger into responsibility for her. Yet she also confessed that she couldn't fully manage alone until her leg healed. Her honesty shifted the tone of the gathering. The elders exchanged glances, and the translator explained that their word for "take her" had been misunderstood. It meant to accept temporary responsibility, not a lifelong bond. They had simply believed that leaving a widow vulnerable after saving her life would be dishonorable. With that clarity, everything changed. I told them that I could stay until she recovered, helping her with what she needed, without making any promises that tied our futures together. They accepted this with visible relief. The pressure that had weighed on the air the previous night seemed to ease, and even Naira's expression softened. Over the next several days, I remained near their camp, doing small tasks to help. I repaired broken tools, carried water, and helped gather supplies. The children followed me around with curiosity, asking questions about ranch life, while the elders observed quietly, making sure I understood the boundaries of their traditions. I spent time with Naira as well, helping her walk a little further each day as her ankles slowly strengthened. She shared parts of her story, her husband's passing, the weight of being a widow in her community, the pressure to stay strong even when strength felt impossible. She spoke without seeking sympathy. She simply wanted to be understood. I learned words from her language, and she picked up a few from mine, which often made the children laugh when either of us mispronounced something. Trust formed between us not because of obligation, but because both of us were choosing to give it space. When her leg had finally healed enough for her to walk on her own, she approached me under the shade of a tall pine and thanked me for everything I had done. She told me she didn't want me to feel tied to her or her people, and she wanted any future path to be based on choice, not tradition. She then added, almost shyly, that she hoped our paths might cross again someday, not because anyone expected it, but because she valued the calmness and respect I carried. I assured her that I valued her strength just as much. When it was time to leave, the camp gathered to see me off. Their expressions were no longer cautious but respectful. As I rode away, I felt a quiet sense of closure, not because the chapter had ended, but because it had found its rightful place. I had entered their lives by accident, been tested by misunderstanding, and left with clarity and mutual respect. Whatever the future held, I knew the memory of that day in the forest would stay with me as a reminder that compassion can bridge even the most unfamiliar worlds, and sometimes the simplest act of helping someone can change the direction of two lives in ways no one expects.